Some coffees just don't need sugar. Not because they're fancy or expensive, but because they're balanced enough to drink as they are. Today, we're going through 7 everyday coffee brands that feel easier to drink straight, real coffees you can actually find in normal grocery stores. The first one is Peet's Big Bang. This is one of those coffees people try once and then quietly keep buying without talking much about it. The roast sits between light and medium, which helps avoid that harsh bite that usually pushes people toward sugar. Instead of hitting you with bitterness, it feels round and steady. You'll usually find it in places like Target, Whole Foods, and many regional grocery chains. It's not the cheapest bag on the shelf, but it stays realistic enough for weekly routines. And that matters more than people admit. If a coffee feels like a luxury purchase, it rarely becomes a daily habit. What makes Peet's Big Bang easier to drink without sugar is how calm the flavor feels. Some coffees start smooth and then turn sharp as they cool. But this one tends to stay consistent from the first sip to the last. That consistency becomes noticeable once you stop masking the cup with sweetness. Another thing people mention is how forgiving it feels in a regular drip machine. Most viewers aren't weighing beans or adjusting grinders before sunrise. They scoop, brew, and move on. And when a coffee still tastes balanced, even if the scoop isn't perfect, mornings start feeling simpler. The second coffee is Lavazza Super Crema. A lot of people think this is only for espresso machines, but it works surprisingly well in everyday setups, too. The body feels richer compared to lighter blends, which makes it easier to drink black. Instead of tasting thin or dry, it has enough weight to feel satisfying on its own. Lavazza shows up in a lot of grocery stores and online retailers, and that availability makes routines easier. You don't need to search for it or wait for it to restock. You walk into the store, grab the blue bag, and keep moving with your day. One thing that stands out is how smooth it stays, even when brewed a little stronger than usual. Some bold coffees become harsh quickly, but this one leans creamy instead of aggressive. That difference changes the experience. Instead of trying to fix bitterness with sugar, you just drink the coffee. Many viewers are surprised by how adaptable it feels. Mocha pot, drip machine, even simple pour-over. The flavor stays approachable. That flexibility matters, because real routines don't always happen with perfect equipment. The third coffee is Tim Hortons' Original Blend. This one sits firmly in the everyday category. No complicated flavor descriptions, no trendy packaging, just a steady cup that feels familiar from the first sip. And familiarity becomes more valuable once you stop adding sugar. You'll find Tim Hortons in many U.S. grocery stores now, especially in northern states, and it's widely available online. The flavor leans mild, which helps reduce that sharp edge people often try to cover with sweetness. Some viewers say this is the kind of coffee they ignored for years because it didn't look exciting. Then they tried it during a sale and realized it was easier to drink than many newer, bold brands. That is, a pattern ULL. Notice in this video, the coffees people overlook are often the ones that work best in real life. Another practical advantage is how predictable it feels. You don't need to change anything about your brewing routine. Same scoop, same machine, same result. And when coffee becomes predictable, you stop thinking about it as a problem to solve. At these points you might notice something about these first 3 coffees. None of them are trying to be extreme. They sit in that middle ground where flavor feels stable. And stability is what makes drinking coffee without sugar feel normal instead of restrictive. Because most mornings aren't about chasing the perfect cup. They're about finding something that works quietly in the background. You wake up, brew your coffee, and don't feel like you need to fix it before the day even begins. In the next part of the list, the coffees move deeper into classic grocery store territory, still affordable, still easy to find, but with slightly different personalities that some people prefer once they fully used to drinking coffee straight. The next one is New England Coffee Breakfast Blend. This is the kind of coffee many people pass by because it doesn't try to look modern or premium. But once you start drinking coffee without sugar, blends like this begin to make more sense. The roast stays lighter, which helps keep bitterness low. And when bitterness stays low, you don't feel the need to fix the cup. You'll usually find New England coffee in regional grocery chains, especially in the Northeast. And it's also easy to order online. The price sits comfortably in the everyday range. which makes it realistic for people who buy coffee every week. That consistency in price becomes part of why routines stick. You don't want a coffee that feels like a different decision every time you go shopping. What stands out here is how gentle the flavor feels. Some lighter coffees taste thin, but this one keeps enough presence to feel complete. You pour a cup, and nothing jumps out as harsh or distracting. For viewers who are used to adding sugar out of habit, that calm profile makes the transition feel natural instead of forced. Another thing people notice is how forgiving it is with brewing. If you use a basic drip machine or even a reusable filter, the flavor stays predictable. You don't need to chase perfect ratio. That simplicity turns coffee back into a routine instead of a project. The fifth coffee is Donut Shop Regular, the classic grocery version, not flavored pods or seasonal varieties. This coffee was designed to be approachable from the start. It doesn't lean too dark or too light, and that neutrality makes it easier to drink without extras. You'll see it almost everywhere. Big box stores, smaller markets, even discount grocery aisles. That wide availability removes a lot of friction from daily life. When coffee is easy to find, it becomes easier to commit to it long enough for your taste to adjust. What makes Donut Shop Regular interesting is how neutral the finish feels. Some coffees leave a heavy aftertaste that pushes people toward sugar just to soften the edges. This one tends to finish clean. That clean finish makes it easier to drink slowly without feeling like something is missing. Many viewers say this is the kind of coffee they didn't expect to like black. They bought it because it was on sale or familiar, and after a few mornings, they realized they weren't reaching for sweeteners anymore. That's the quiet advantage of balanced blends. They don't try to impress you, they just stay drinkable. Another practical detail is flexibility. Whether you brew a full pot for the house or just a single cup, the flavor stays stable. And when coffee behaves the same way every day, routines start feeling simpler. The sixth coffee on this list is Hills Brothers Original. This brand has been around for decades, and that longevity says something about how dependable it is. The can looks simple, maybe even old-fashioned, but the flavor stays right in that middle range. That works well without sugar. Hills Brothers leans medium roast, which avoids the extremes that often create harshness. Instead of feeling aggressive, it feels steady. And when coffee feels steady, you stop thinking about adjusting it. You just drink it. You'll usually find it in regular grocery stores, sometimes at a lower price compared to newer brands. That affordability matters because habits grow around things that fit your budget long term. Coffee that feels realistic week after week tends to stay in the cabinet longer. One thing many viewers mention is how familiar it tastes. It doesn't try to introduce complicated flavors. It just feels like coffee, straightforward and predictable. That familiarity becomes comforting once you stop adding sugar, because you're not dealing with surprises every morning. Another advantage is how well it handles everyday brewing. A simple drip machine works fine. Even if your water runs a little hot, or the scoop is slightly off, the cup still feels balanced. That forgiving nature makes it easier to live with, compared to coffees that demand precision. By now, you might notice that the coffees on this part of the list lean more toward classic grocery store styles. They're not trying to reinvent anything. They're designed for daily drinking. And for many adults over 45, daily drinking is exactly what matters. You don't need coffee to be exciting. You need it to be dependable. There's also a psychological shift that happens around this point. The first few days without sugar might feel unfamiliar, but once you find a coffee that doesn't fight you, your taste starts adjusting. Instead of looking for sweetness, you start appreciating stability, and that's really the thread connecting these coffees so far. They're easy to find, easy to brew, and easy to live with. They don't require extra steps or constant adjustments. They simply fit into real mornings without asking much from you. In the final part of this list, we'll move into the last coffee, one that sits in a softer space, and then step back to look at why some everyday brands naturally feel easier to drink without sugar, especially as routines change over time. The last coffee on this list is Cameron's Breakfast Blend. This one sits in a softer space compared to some of the others, and that softer profile is exactly why many people find it easier to drink without sugar. The flavor doesn't try to push intensity. It feels calm from the first sip, which makes mornings feel slower instead of rushed. You'll usually find Cameron's in grocery stores across the US or easily online, often in larger bags that last longer than expected. That practicality matters. When a coffee stays available and affordable, you stop thinking about replacing it and start letting it become part of your daily rhythm. What stands out is how clean the finish feels. Some coffees leave a heavy aftertaste that makes people reach for sweetness just to balance it. Cameron's tends to fade gently, which makes it easier to drink black without feeling like something is missing. And when the aftertaste stays light, the whole experience feels simpler. Another thing people mention is how forgiving it is in a regular drip machine. You don't need perfect measurements. Even if the scoop changes slightly from day to day, the cup still feels balanced. That kind of forgiveness removes pressure from the routine. Coffee becomes a quiet habit instead of something you have to manage. Now that we've gone through all 7 coffees, there's a bigger pattern worth noticing. None of these brands are trying to be extreme. They don't chase the darkest roast or the boldest label. They stay in that middle space where flavor feels steady. And that steadiness is what allows people to stop adding sugar without feeling like they're reforcing a change. Many viewers think the goal is to find the strongest coffee possible, but often the opposite works better. When a coffee feels balanced, your palate adapts naturally. You stop thinking about sweetness because the cup already feels complete. That shift doesn't happen overnight. It happens through repetition. The same bag, the same routine, the same quiet mornings. Consistency plays a bigger role than most people realize. Coffee that tastes different every time you buy it makes habits harder to build, but when the flavor stays predictable, your body starts recognizing it as part of the day. You wake up, make your cup, and everything feels familiar. That familiarity reduces the urge to change things constantly.